Just a word of introduction. So Marcus McAllister, originally from Arkansas. I did fine arts degree painting and drawing at LSU. Went from there, spent a few years in New York, and then got run over by France like a truck. Just ended up in Paris. I've now been there 21 years. I'm now French-American, double citizen. That's cool. Planning to stay in France, and it's been really in France where I started to show work. When I was in New York, I was kind of between art student and artist. And it's been in France, in Paris, that I've started showing work and doing this full-time, making my way as an artist. Doing this one was one of those side, just to keep myself going in the studio, playing with other stuff, because I'm not very good. I'm kind of squirrel. Oh, there's something else. So in painting, I always have other stuff I'm working on. This one I was working on a series of little portraits. 2 in the morning, I'm in the studio, I've been painting all day, da-da-da. It's from a photo of me, self-portrait, in Rome. And while I was really working on the way of drawing the figure. I was putting it in, wiping it down, didn't want to draw it too hard, so having fun playing with formal concerns. And then suddenly, 2 in the morning, right? From my guts, like, oh look, it's like the night. So I imagined this is kind of the costume of the night from the film that I've been working on now for probably 4 months. Ooh, I could do that. And then first thing I was like, oh no, that's too obvious. That's me dressing up as the night, I can't do that. And had a discussion with myself in my studio, 2 in the morning, going, Marcus, that's the point of this series, is to do that. You know, that's why you're doing, that's the courage to do what kind of bubbles up. Don't worry about, people are going to know that. So I said, okay, swear to God, the moment that I said, okay, to putting this costume on my self-portrait, it painted itself. I could have been doing this, and it went itself. Done, finished. So when I was hanging the show, I was like, this one's kind of separate from the two series I'm going to show. Don't know, it was my partner who was very good. It's good to have allies in these kind of moments. He looked at me, he's like, Marcus, this is actually really interesting. He's like, yeah, but it's kind of obvious, I feel kind of vulnerable. He's like, Marcus, we all know, you're the knight, we get it. Okay, I ended up hanging it in a very prominent place in the show, and I had a number of reactions. This is a key. Like, this is really good, I get it. It's like, okay.
Technique of the set of portraits, which the portraits are fascinating.
Well,
but in terms of
technique, like how to actually there are newsprint glued to canvas. The blue series are actually paper glued to wood. So both of these two series, this is me starting the series of night, not knowing where it's going to go, and one way to kind of demystify or like make it less precious was not to go directly onto canvas. Like I did a whole bunch of pages, blue background, had them up on the wall. So I'm going to work on this. It's paper, doesn't count. Those are actually newsprints where I just put stuff down. I'd done this a few years ago, a whole series of portraits, working from newsprint. A lot of it was what I'd use to mix paint on. So spread it out, get it thin, and then use that. In another series, I'd done that, and I liked the rough edge. And so it was a way to keep that edge, be able to present them. That was much later, though. I mean, I had the idea because, I don't want to be stupid. So I had the idea that I could do that from experience. But the idea was just to get in, play with images. A number of them were the knights, a few of death, a couple of random other people from the film. What's very interesting to me, I have seen the film now the past year. I've seen it probably 3 or 4 times. Gone through, gathered images, bought the DVD. I realized most of the images I had were from the first 5 minutes of the film. When it wakes up, Knight wakes up, and you don't know if they're shipwrecked, they're just the knight and his squire waking up on this beach, coming out of the water, and then Death shows up and says, it's your moment. He's like, hey, do you play chess? So, and these images, there were other moments in the film, but particularly that, in those 10 pages that I printed out, that was what I had. So going back and seeing the film 8 years later, I was like, oh, there's whole bunches of this film that I'm just like, don't worry about it. Again, it's the night that I'm interested in. This is me, kind of idea, I use a lot of the Jungian ideas, archetypes, active imagination. Basically, this film, it's like I kind of watched it before I went to bed, and then I'm trying to just let it simmer through and dream about it. So that's where Percival comes in. Who knows where it's going to lead me? That's the point. That's what I'm hoping.
You were talking about your sketchbooks, then what did you use? Did you use pencil or charcoal or watercolor or all of that?
Yes, all of that. Not much charcoal. I've just recently come back to using a bit of pencil. Mm-hmm. So, but you can bring them out. I can show this one. It's in these pages, but you can see the sketchbook is
colorful.
It's watercolor, it's crayon. I just did a workshop, some of you were there, this was looking at different pigments or different material that I picked up for the workshop to show. And so one of the first things I do is There's also meetings, appointments, everything goes in the sketchbook, which helps to kind of simmer everything down. In 2015, moments like that of kind of self-doubt and questioning, this is a lifeline. When I'm traveling, like here I'll be in the States for a month, not in the studio painting, there's always this to play with. Sometimes it's random. This was just a little while ago in the car, doing a little drawing from a photo that I picked up, just to put stuff down and see what I get. Later I'll go back. When I get back to the studio in Paris at the end of March, one of the things I will do is go through this sketchbook. It's going to be pretty well filled, I think, in the next 3 weeks. I'll go back and figure out where this night is still popping up while I'm doing other things. Kind of see, maybe not, or if it's not the night, maybe his horse, maybe these birds popped up in this image. Birds I've done a lot over time. Trying to figure out this image. There's some others I've been working on with this person. That's me right there. That's just coming out. Maybe something else like that will come into play as it's active imagination, like Carl Jung said. It's like active dreaming. It's putting stuff out there and seeing, following that kind of hints and not trying to talk myself out of it. Like do it and see what happens, see what the next thing. Sometimes really obvious stuff, once you start actually playing with it, something else.
So how do you take the watercolor sketchbook, and then is that on canvas right there?
That's on canvas,
Is that all acrylic or is that gouache?
No, that's the thing that I've been doing the past couple years, kind of newer, the freedom. This one happens to be, it's acrylic, and then you can see some crayon. These are water-soluble crayons that I've used in the sketchbook that I'm using as pigment. I don't have one here, but there's some that've got, there is. This one actually has some willow charcoal in it, which if you get that wet, like the crayons, like the gouache, you get it wet, you can wipe it all down because it's acrylic, it doesn't stick. So there's a whole process of putting it in, getting it wet, getting it to stick a little bit, covering it with acrylic medium, and varnishing it so that they survive. It's also because acrylics, I really like working with acrylics. It's a spontaneity, it's easy. But just acrylic can be kind of dead. It's not like oils with those effects. I could go back and do glazing of oils. That would be that's something kind of, maybe I need to do that. What I've actually been finding using these crayons, using charcoal, using pastels, there's some that actually gouache. The last painting, the one under my name over there, I finished that the weekend before I came. Because when I found out that we were two artists, because one person dropped out, I was like, I had this whole room. I wasn't going to bring the sketchbook pages nor the two big paintings. Partly because that one wasn't done. So I was like, oh my God! All the lace work on that was what I added the later part. That's all gouache, actually. Gouache and crayon. So in doing it, if I get it wet, I can take it all off and be back to where I started. But I like it because it gives it sort of velvety quality. It holds the light differently. So
Do you find it hard to go from that fluid watercolor to the acrylic medium?
Yeah, that's why I try not to, I don't want to use these, I don't want to do this exactly like that, because I would get caught in the execution. So much of it is trying to find, I want all my work to have the same sort of spontaneity, where what I say is like, I want the work, whether it's on canvas or paper, I want the work to have the image to have the same relationship to the support that dreams do to sleep. And so these aren't sketches for that. These are all just small dreams, bigger dreams. But they're all kind of, I'm trying to dream on paper or canvas and trying to find ways that I can do that. Obviously when it's on canvas, you can't do the same thing as on paper. That's part of the craft. Trying to play.
Can you talk about the process for removing sketchbook pages from the sketchbook, exhibiting them, making copies, those kinds of things?
Well, that's going to be on. Let's see. When I go through a sketchbook, so here's number 101. When I go through, so if I flip, this is actually one, somebody selected this from the book during the opening, so I just had to go through the process. What I do is, when I finish a book, like this image will probably one I'll pull out because I think it works. This one is actually more just notes or playing. So I'll go through, and there's generally a number that I will feel like it's fit. And I don't really know how to describe it. There's a certain tension, like when a work says that it's done, in my sketchbook, there's certain pages. The page will tell me when they're done, it's time to turn the page. But sometimes they're done and they're not meant to be a finished piece. So that's also why I still do always, even though I know all of these images are front and back. All the sketch pages, there's always a hidden image. So, because I want to keep this idea of I'm not doing this to show, I'm just filling up this book, getting energy. When I go through, what I end up doing is I'll cut out and leave you a little flap. And then I go to photocopy. This image is here, right in the middle. Second row, third image. And it's actually not, this is actually a photo of me. It happens to be the moment of, it was a photo, I was looking at the Eiffel Tower when they were doing the countdown to the 2000. And I in my studio, just going through, playing with stuff. I've got lots of photos on the wall, looking at things. This photo popped up and I saw myself standing there and I'm like, this is the same series. So I did the drawing just because I was interested. When I went through before this show, cutting out some new pieces, I was like, oh, this one's the knife. Somebody else could say no, but I'd say yes. So it's there. Now when I cut it out, photocopy both sides, so this image is behind it. And then this, you can see where that's actually the photocopies. So it's a way that I have found to liberate images so they can be shown. I didn't start out doing this. It was actually, I'd been doing sketchbooks. I started at LSU, professor saying you got to keep a sketchbook. Started that way, and then probably 10 years down the road, it was actually in France when I started to show work, sort of present myself as an artist a little bit more. And some people were like, oh, I like this one. I was like, well, I'll do it for you. I'm like, no, I want that one. Like, okay. And then I had to figure out, well, how can I do that? And then I did, when I started cutting out some pages that people liked, I did 2 sketchbook where I was cutting out each page, gluing it as an accordion, so I could like twice as much work, but that way it was just one side. And then I went, oh no, this is not good, because then I was actually doing them to cut them out to show. I was like, ooh, stop that. Went back and painted the backs of them. Like twice as much work, and then went back and painted the backs. Like, okay, we'll stop that. So that's how the sketchbook go about.
There seem to be a lot of paintings where the figure is really intentional and almost a portrait idea. And then there's so many that the figure is just obliterated and sort of not specific.
That's something I'm kind of working towards, I think. That's one of the reasons why I did this series of portraits, was to do the portraits, to kind of get them out of the way. Because the more recent pieces, like the 3 that are there, these 2, and these 2, and these 2, and even that one, the more recent ones, it is. I'm deliberately trying to not go in and put that figure in, because I'm working with it. Partly it's boredom, I keep doing it. So I was like, let's do it some other way. What's interesting about that, the one that's the pink one, the one that's the orange, people kept asking me, is that a self-portrait? I was like, it's actually, no, it's from the image, just kind of fuzzing it out and not going in and drawing it. Somehow or another, that becomes a self-portrait. That slips out. The pink one, it was the flyer, and I was like, oh, it's self-portrait. I've actually had people come and tell me, great self-portrait, I love this image. I'm like, we'll go with that. But they're all kind of self-portraits, and partly is doing that kind of blurred, letting it slide. That's what I'm interested in. I don't want to do just illustrations of, it's Max von Sydow is the actor. I don't want to do portraits of him, for example.
Right.
So, and then the idea I like is because it is actually easier, particularly with this one. I was really pleased with the horizontal one. I kind of didn't let myself go back in and work that figure, because then that would be my tendency, to want to be a good kid, finish it. Just, no, that's the point, leave it. And listen to what I get, because I can talk myself out of it and just go and kill it. So I'm actually really pleased with those 3 for those kind of reasons. That one, the figure, I did it with a brown crayon. There's some paint and some crayon, and then like put it in, wiped it out, put it in a little bit, left it, stepped away, looked at it for a while, went back in, trying to stay that balancing act where it's done. Because I don't want to just stop and say it's done when it's not, but trying to figure out where that line is and not go back in. It's like, oh, it's done because I've literally touched every centimeter of the thing, because that's how we kill it.